Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining me here at Next Level ABM for this session. My name is Avishai. I'm co-founder and CEO at TrendDemon. And today we'll be talking about the B2B website. And more specifically, we'll discuss the chasm and the drop in opportunities that happens after highly engaged, intentful buyers visit the website. So a few questions that we'll be answering in this presentation is exactly how many opportunities is your website losing? How the anonymous journey of buyers of accounts actually looks like as they're traveling through your website, through your different assets. And we'll also take a look at what can be done. So what are some approaches and methodologies that can help us bridge that gap that happens when visitors reach our website? All right, let's get started. So we'll start with a quick introduction about TrendDemon, but more rather than in a sense of a product or a company pitch, it's more to give context on where we're getting the data that we're going to be sharing in this presentation. So where are some of those insights coming from? Why are we making those recommendations based on which observations that we're having, on which data? So that's going to be just the entry. Then we're going to dive into the problem, the challenge. How much business is the website costing? How many opportunities are dropping? Why is that happening? Why is that drop becoming so significant? And how that corresponds with the challenges of modern B2B marketing. Then we'll talk about the playbook, how to start bridging and connecting the pieces, connecting the dots in order to build a more streamlined contextual journey that empowers buyers rather than places obstacles and friction in their path. And lastly, we're going to see an example of how this implementation may look like in a real life scenario. We're going to take a look at a B2B cybersecurity company. And at the end, we have a special offer for B2B Marketing Exchange participants, for Next Level ABM conference participants. We'll be providing a complimentary website audit to help you uncover some of those gaps free of charge, self-service, and we'll share the link right after the presentation, so stick around. All right. So TrendDemon is a website journey orchestration platform. It's part of a growing suite of solutions of platforms that is designed to help bridge the gap between highly engaged, relevant buyers visiting the B2B website until they're able to reach the next level to de-anonymize, whether it's in the marketing automation or in the sales development stage. Essentially helping transform more of those anonymous visitors coming into the website into pipeline opportunities. As mentioned, we're part of an emerging category. So just a few weeks ago in Gartner's Marketing Symposium, the new category of journey orchestration was exposed and discussed. TrendDemon is part of website journey orchestration. And the purpose is to show you a little bit of where we're positioned kind of within the general stacks of marketers. So you have channels, sources, if it's organic or if it's paid, if it's account-based or not. So you have those vendors on the left here. On the right, you have the marketing automation platforms, the CRM. TrendDemon and website orchestration in general sits in the middle between those two categories, and we're helping to connect the dots in this space. Why is that even important? So basically, what we do is we help transform journeys from, which is here on the left, which is what typically happens in most B2B websites that we start working with. Their journeys, their buyer journeys are very fragmented, convoluted, non-contextual, and they eventually result in what we call the anonymous loss. So the visitor is not able to find what they're looking for, fumbling around and then just leaving. And we're helping transform it into more aligned journeys to understand where, from which company a certain visitor is coming from. So in this case, somebody from Big Corp is coming, visiting, which content they should be reading to help get them to the next goal, and so forth and so forth. Now, it's not just about one ideal persona, but how do I do this at scale to many different personas, many different industries, types of accounts that are visiting my website. But let's go into the problem. What really is the magnitude of the problem, why it's caused, and what are the challenges that are making this problem so persistent? So I think one of the main topics that have been discussed at length over the past few years is the consumerization of the B2B buyer journey. Now, it's a mouthful, but in other words, what we're basically saying is that there's an overwhelming amount of information, an overwhelming amount of vendors and solutions, categories, and the B2B buyer just finds themselves overwhelmed by all of this information. So very much like a consumer, B2B buyers are deciding to take control, right? They want to be in charge. They want to understand, they want to explore, and they want to be able to absorb this information, make those decisions before they engage the seller. So we're seeing this approach and shift from a sales-led motion to a buyer-led motion happening very rapidly over the past few years in B2B. We define it as the selfie era. And the reason we call it the selfie is because it revolves around three main topics. The first is self-exploration. So buyers want to explore, see what's out there on their own. Self-education, buyers want to teach themselves. They want to better understand what they're up against, what the problems are. And finally, if possible, they also want to self-evaluate. We can see this with the rise of PLG, of product-led growth, as a great indicator of that buyers want to have this hands-on experience with the technology, with the products, and make sure it's a fit before engaging with sales. And if we're looking at the overall B2B journey, the digital journey, people coming in from external research, from review sites, word of mouth, paid organic media, coming into the website, moving on to becoming leads and opportunities. Now let's talk about the big drop, the chasm. We see that over 30% of the opportunities that come to the website and that are from target companies from within your ICP will drop. And they're going to do this at the very early starts of their journey through your website. And the way that we know that this 30% is bridgeable is that we know that when you do streamline and you are able to close that gap, you see this increase of a top line 30% of opportunities. 30% is a lot when it comes to opportunities generated by your website. Think about the number of opportunities your company is dealing with. Think of the volume and the value of those 30% translated into dollars. So it's a huge, huge gap. And I think what makes it even more interesting is the fact that it's an avoidable waste, in the sense that the marketing team has done much of the heavy lifting up until that point. They've crafted the right message, they've engaged the right audience, they've managed to click and get to that destination, but then that experience breaks. It could be because they've been led into a gated page, urging them to de-anonymize, urging them to expose themselves and not providing any meaningful value there. Or it could be because it just was too much effort to try and understand whether that's the right fit and they disengage. Putting that into context with the reduced amount of attention people have these days, right? They are moving so rapidly between sites, between topics, between items. You have that fraction of a second to really capture their attention. If you fail at that, they're going to leave never to return. We talked about at length about the anonymous journey. Now, it is an integral part of buyer-led. And the reason for that is that buyers, as we talked about, want to remain in control. They want to stay in control of their journey. Giving your personal information relinquishes, forfeits some of that control, because now sales representatives are going to be able to contact you and email you. And the buyer knows that they want to do this only when they have gained a certain level of trust with that company. 90% of the buyer journey is anonymous. If we take an individual visitor that became an SQL, 90% of their journey is going to be in the dark. Now, it's actually much worse when we're talking about the account perspective, because as you know, if we're talking about account-based marketing and the account-based journeys, you're going to have several stakeholders, decision makers, people from the same company visiting your website. The majority of them are not going to de-anonymize even as the deal progresses, even as they move to an opportunity or even closed one. So you would have maybe one person from that company de-anonymizing themselves, but the rest are going to be in the dark, but their journey still needs to be supported. You still want to be able to serve them relevant information because they're part of that decision-making process. So anonymization is a growing trend. A few years ago, we did the research, we were at about 70%, grew to 80, now we're at 90. And this trend is expected to become even greater. That anonymous journey, that dark journey is expected to grow even more. So let's talk a little bit about some numbers in terms of in terms of benchmarks, how B2B websites are actually converting. So what we have here is out of the 100% of website visitors, only 32% move on to the stage we call proceed. And proceed is a very low threshold. We're talking about people that have just visited more than one page. We're not even talking about reads at this point. It's just a second page view. Only 32% will reach that, that stage. Then afterwards, 11% will be reading 3 or more pages on the website. And when we talk about reading, is really scrolling through, engaging with a page as opposed to just browsing as a page view would. And lastly, the reach to SQL, 0.2% of all total visitors will actually reach that stage. So these are some general B2B benchmarks. And if you're interested in knowing how your site is converting to proceed, engage, and reach, as I mentioned at the end of this presentation, we'll share a link to a free self-service audit, which you can install on your website. And it will give you pretty much this diagram showing you how effective is your website and where are your critical choke points that you should pay attention to as you're investing more in bringing high quality intentful traffic to your site. So let's put on the ABM lens. And as we're starting to go deeper, let's talk also about the breakdown of what those journeys look like, of those SQLs. So we tend to think of B2B journeys as very, very long with tons of content being consumed. The reality is, if we're looking at an SQL journey, the average is 12 page views, 7 full page reads, 3 sessions altogether. So, and I think this relates to the diminishing attention span of people. People will not be able to consume dozens of pages. They simply don't have the time or bandwidth or attention span today. So that means that your window of opportunity to really engage with them and educate them and help them evaluate, all of that has to be done in a very short and narrow window. And if you miss that window, it's going to be very hard to get them back on track. And that is why being contextual on those moments of opportunity that the visitor is engaged, is attentive, that's why it's so critical to really make sure their experience is relevant and contextual. As we're talking about the account-based perspective, the picture is a bit better, but not a whole lot. So only 46%, of verified accounts will not even move beyond the second page view. So think about it. You've invested in bringing relevant people from target accounts from your ICP to your website. Half of them will not even see a second page view. Now they could be super relevant, but they will just drop there. So that's a major gap that can be dramatically improved through a better approach, through a better buyer-led approach on your website. And I think now let's connect it to the other side, and that's the B2B marketer these days. Now, B2B marketers are confronted with an overwhelming amount of tasks, of responsibilities. In parallel, they're dealing with a diminishing or shrinking team. So the marketing teams and B2B companies are traditionally small. As we're seeing signs of a potential downturn approaching, those constraints are going to be even bigger. Budgets are going to shrink, and marketers will have to know how to make more with less. So these challenges and these tasks are basically compounding. But one thing is very clear: marketers understand that engaging buyers at the right time at the right challenge is a major focal point, is a major priority. Creating personalized experiences is a major priority. And I think this is also part of the conflict, that they really have so much on their plate at the moment, but the task of prioritizing very clearly what deserves their attention versus what can be pushed off is becoming increasingly difficult. And we know marketers today simply don't have the bandwidth to deal with anything that's not a very high level priority. And the challenge with personalization so far, or journey orchestration, is that it's becoming more and more complex. And so you have this diminishing bandwidth on one side, and you have this increased challenge of personalization of orchestration on the other side. And we're going to show now how to try and balance some of those tensions and challenges between a limited bandwidth and the needs to orchestrate and personalize and contextualize and support buyer-led journeys. All right, so let's discuss the playbook. How does this playbook actually look like? And what we're going to discuss is that in a very similar way that, in the sales process or in the marketing automation process, or even when you're buying media, you have these clear feedback loops in place. And the one place that you don't have them yet is the website. The website is still regarded and is performing in many places as a static display case. Think more Blockbuster than Netflix, right? It's a library that the visitor has to manually operate, has to manually find what they're looking for. And that creates friction. And in an attentionless world where buyers have less and less attention and time, this creates the drop. So as we're talking about the process, the first thing that we see and that is challenging for many marketers is to build that listening muscle on their digital assets. Now, yeah, of course, everybody's using analytics. You're all collecting data. We're all looking at traffic and page views and funnels all day long. That's fine. But I don't think we're really listening to what the audience, and more importantly, what specific audiences are telling us. And what we mean by listening is to be able to map journeys of successful buyers, of successful companies that reached the end goal, understand which assets they've actually engaged with, as opposed to just browsed or moved through, and use that as a starting point to build your insights layer and then your activation layer. And again, this is something that in the data level exists in different platforms. So journey mapping has their capabilities in the marketing automation. There are different vendors offering that. The big challenge, as with everything, is the bandwidth and the effort it takes to operationalize those insights. What do you do with them? And what we want to offer here is a rather simple way and some tools that can help bridge that gap between data and action, and tie that into a feedback loop as opposed to a one-off, which is not sustainable and will not help close that gap. So listening is that ability to map and understand those successful journeys. The second part we'll discuss is how to score and sort the different digital assets that you currently have and find out which of them are working, which of them should be promoted internally within your website, given more visibility, and at which order. Because one of the things that we've discovered working with over 100 B2B companies for the past years, the order of the asset, not just its pure effectiveness, has a significant influence on whether that asset will be impactful and instrumental in people moving forward. So that puzzle that needs to be solved is not just which content is good versus bad, but where in the buyer journey do these assets perform best. So that's a second level of analytics or insights that needs to be created. The last part is really the activation. How do we serve it? Either automatically in real time through personalization, or even how do I modify the website to give more visibility to those high impactful assets? All right. So now we're going to take a look at how this implementation looks like in a real life scenario. On a B2B website of a cybersecurity company, we're going to first take a look at how they're changing the appearance of their website depending on different personas, different industries visiting the same page. And then we're going to take a look behind the scene of which data has been collected in order to enable that level of personalization. So let's start. All right. So meet CyberCorp. CyberCorp is selling a cybersecurity solution for a number of different industries. They have automotive customers, they have financial and industrial. Within those different industries, they also have different personas that may be visiting their website. So you may have a researcher, a cybersecurity researcher coming into their website to learn more about latest trends. Or you may have their actual buyer. They could be the CISO of the company, practitioners, or any other decision maker that's involved in the decision of buying cybersecurity products. As we're browsing through the website, here we have a blog page. On the right here, you can see various recommendations and different calls to action. And this page has been specifically designed to engage financial visitors. So people, actual analysts from financial companies visiting the website. So the recommendations that you see here and here, as well as calls to action embedded here, are specifically tailored for that persona. Why were these pieces recommended or these items? Well, we're going to then take a look at what were the metrics that were calculated in order to basically decide on which content to show. But if we're looking at the same page, and now we're visiting from an automotive company, and of course, with ABM, there's a ton of ways to de-anonymize the company. So we can know if that visitor is, for example, coming in from Toyota, Mercedes-Benz, or coming in from Audi. And then we can recommend content on the same page, right? Just tailored, personalized to their specific industry. So now we have consultation for automotive, and we will have a case study that's relevant to the automotive industry here. And there could be other pages and posts that could be relevant for that specific industry. So we want to be able to personalize that journey so the buyer, the potential buyer, doesn't have to work hard to find out this information. Every additional click they need to do in order to get to the information they want dramatically reduces the chance they will move forward. We saw a drop of about 70% from initial visits to the second page. You think about that is happening in every step of the way. That's why it's so dramatic to be present with relevant information. Right, so if we want to understand what's the persona that a certain visitor is coming from, well, a really effective and simple way that we've discovered is just simply to ask them. And simpler usually is better. And what you have here is a very easy to use survey module, questionnaire. What would you be interested in? And based on those answers, you can basically place certain visitors in certain personas. So now you have the persona, now you have the industry, the company, and you can start building your orchestrations or analytics around it. So now let's take a look behind the scene. We talked about the first step of the playbook, which is listening, which is being able to connect the journeys. And to do this, I'm going to revert to our dashboard to show you how Trendyman does listening, but the principles there are relevant whichever platform, whichever solution that you're using. The key point here is to understand what to listen to rather than how to listen to it, right? All right. So from Trendyman's dashboard, as you can see, we have the flow analysis. As I mentioned, you can actually look and see how many companies visiting your site moved on to proceeded, engaged, reached. As I mentioned, you'll be able to sign up for such an audit yourselves and look at your own data and see how big that website gap is for you. But for now, we want to start with looking at the journeys. And what we have here is a visualization of a buyer journey coming into the website from initial touch point until the closed one in sales or to engagement with the sales. That specific user came from LinkedIn paid. You can see the different pages that they've passed through and which units they've engaged with. And that's important in order to assess later which content was really impactful in those successful journeys. So you can see the different sessions as they were browsing through the website, coming back from LinkedIn, organic, and then finally converting through direct. So when we're talking about listening, it really is listening about what resonates with those potential buyers. In this case, we could have created an audience based on visitors from a financial industry and just look at how they're engaging, how they're moving, how they're reaching goals throughout the website. So that's level one of listening. Let's go up a level, and we talked about scoring and sorting. And what we have here in the Explore Assets section is just such an analysis. So we took all the pages that participated in successful journeys, for example, to the SQL goal, and we've seen how many of those visits actually ended up in a completed goal, in a reached goal. We also looked at what's the engagement rate, so whether these pages were actually read on their way to the goal. And the last part, which is a bit trickier, but is very, very important, is the sorting. And so we've done the scoring here, right? We have the completion rate. Now we're talking about sorting, I'm sorry. And sorting really is about how to position those effective items that we found, those gold nuggets. And as you remember, if we go back to the typical journey, we're talking about 7 pages read in SQL journeys. Like I said, that's not a lot. But within those 7 pages, you really have to pay attention to where those pages were read in successful journeys. So it's not just about a quantity and just getting them to read any 7 pages or even the most impactful 7 pages, but reading them in the right order. And what we have in the position score is that sorting mechanism that tells for every page where they perform best. If it's in the landing stage, the conversion stage, landing stage, nurture, or conversion stages of their buyer journeys. That then allows you to build and start to organize your website. Again, without even Trendyman, you can take those insights and you can restructure, reorganize places, content, recommendations on your site based on these insights. So again, this doesn't require any kind of heavy, complex, real-time personalization platform to execute. This really is about listening to the right signals coming in from your audience. And lastly, as we break it down to the company level, so we went from the journey to the assets, now we can look at the company level. We can also take a look at either target lists or even individual companies. So here we have journeys from visitors from Microsoft, and we want to understand what that specific either account or a group of accounts, which content they've engaged with. And we can see that right here. Again, this is content that you can generate or you could look at from different platforms or solutions. But the goal here is to break down kind of the overall traffic, those 100% of visitors that are coming to your website, and look at them in two different perspectives. One, look at them at the target audience perspective. So build your target audiences, your target segments, and focus on them. And secondly, look at them from the journey perspective as opposed from the session perspective, which is what most web analytics tools tell you. They tell you how, what's the traffic, what's the bounce rate, what's the time on page. It really helps you build that picture. You need to combine several different sources for that to accomplish that. Lastly, and this is just how we execute on full journey orchestration. And one thing that we've just announced at the recent Gartner Symposium is autonomous orchestration. Again, realizing that the biggest risk and pain of current B2B marketers or demand gens is time. That is hands down their most valuable resources, and that's the resource that's most at risk. So we wanted to see how we can even reduce the overhead of building orchestrations even further. What you can see here are three types of orchestrations designed for different audiences, one for financial, corporation visitors, industrial, or automotive. And what we've done is we've basically eliminated the need to A/B test a lot of different creatives and to sequence different types of offers depending on the stage and create a lot of different sub-audiences and specific campaigns and basically bring it all together. So all you need to do with autonomous orchestration is define your target audiences. It could be a mixture of different audiences, for example, financial, under 100 million or over 100 million, or whatever you want to define. The goal could be MQL, SQL, closed one, sign up, and then which group of offers should be served to that group of people. And when we say group of offers, it can be any asset and creative and page on your website. It can be product pages, can be content pages, webinars, white papers, everything that can be grouped for that audience is placed under those tags. And then Trendemon, once you tell it where you want these orchestrations to run, automatically optimizes and sorts that journey. So that's taking journey orchestration again to the other level. But going back to our presentation here, and really what we wanted to share, going back to our feedback loop, is how through building your ability to listen to your audiences, being mindful at what they're consuming, and then being able to serve, and as opposed to trying to force them down a certain path, as opposed to gating them and always kind of pushing for that de-anonymization, marketers need to think of themselves more as enablers of journeys rather than the leader of the journey. The buyers are leading the journey. The buyers are calling the shots. The marketer's role is to empower them and support them and be there and provide value. And when you think of it, it's not that different than what a great salesperson is about, right? A great salesperson is first about listening, then evaluating if there's a great fit, and then serving with a better solution. So we want to do this at scale on the website, just we would if they were on call with one of our great sales representatives. Lastly, as we mentioned, we have a special offer for B2B Marketing Exchange Next Level ABM participants. We also want you to uncover that gap. We want to help you illuminate that dark journey. And so we're offering free of charge Trendemon's content website impact audit, and allowing you to kind of pop the hood of what's really happening on your website. Where are those choke points, and where are some areas that maybe with a bit of effort and restructuring, you can gain some dramatic results and uplift. So I want to thank you all for joining me for this session, and we look forward to connecting with you all in the next events. Thank you very much.